Hello, back for another one. Today I'm going to be talking about Differently Morphous by Yahtzee Croshaw. So, let's get into it, why don't we? So, Differently Morphous. To start off with, I've read We'll Save the Galaxy for Food, I've read its sequel, I've read Mogworld, so with all those under my belt, this one felt like a pretty safe bet. Yahtzee Croshaw and his dry wit convert wonderfully from the short, minutes-long barrages like his Zero Punctuation series on YouTube to longer, more thought-out works. His brand of comedy really gets to me in a way that is surpassed only by Terry Pratchett, I think. Maybe this is a sign I haven't read much comedy, but oh well. The book is set in a modern Britain, where magical powers are granted to some individuals by eldritch entities from another dimension. Children with these powers must be rigorously trained to control them, lest that entity take them over and possess them. And so, the long-standing Ministry of Occultism exists to take these budding bundles of potential and sternly give them the education they need to avoid any tentacle-filled mistakes. And this system works wonderfully until a rather public demonstration from some refugee-seeking slime monsters causes the wider world to become aware of the magical nature of things. The Ministry of Occultism and the school are outed to the public, and suddenly the government has to rush to fix the optics of the situation. Some studious individuals start asking if it's really ethical to be forcing these kids into training that prevents eldritch possession, and potentially, if both student and eldritch horror are consenting, should they not be allowed to live life together as a normal member of society? And so that's the sandbox this book chooses to play in. It takes this fun, silly story and uses it as an analog to poke fun at some of the different conversations that have been swirling around the internet in recent years about identity politics and LGBTQ rights. It handles it fairly soundly, I think, not villainizing either side, and instead using the story as a way to show how aspects of both sides can sometimes be rather silly. From the advocate of rights that is a bit too enthusiastic about the proper terminology and causing offense, to the point that it becomes a detriment to the cause they're fighting for, to the generally chummy but still kind of backwards thinking older generation that is unaccepting to change and is a bit obviously bigoted. I think this book is pretty even-handed with how it handles both parties. As far as criticism is concerned, there's one scene where I felt like its use of cursing was a bit over the top, but that might just be me. All of the characters were mildly one-note, but I don't really see that as a detriment. One note, yes, but together they play quite the fun little ditty. And although one character in particular might have been huffing away at their tuba a bit too heavily, I felt that it didn't harm the overall story too badly. I waited for far too long to pick up this book. It's been sitting on my TBR shelf for ages, and I only picked it up now because I noticed that the sequel has recently been released and wanted to pick that up. It proved a wonderful reprieve from the rather dense and dull classic science fiction I've been reading of late, and I'm quite eager to move on to the sequel. As always, the audiobook, performed by Croshaw himself, was wonderful, and his voices and attitudes he gives to the characters are always a joy to listen to. There's always something fun to listening to an audiobook narrated by the author himself. Assuming they are skillful enough to realize it, it's fascinating to hear their direct portrayal of the characters they have imagined. And yeah, that's it. I thought this was a wonderful book, and I don't know, I've been through, I think, probably over half of what Croshaw's written so far. I think We'll Save the Galaxy for Food and its sequel, Will Destroy the Galaxy for Cash, I think is that one, are probably my favorites still. They're just so fun, and I love the character and the main, dejected pilot character. This one was fun too. I really like the setting of it and some of the characters as well. A lot of the characters feel very similar to the stuff in his other writing. I also quite liked that there were references in Differently Morphous to Mogworld and We'll Save the Galaxy for Cash. There were a lot of different, he's watching that TV show, and that TV show happened to be, a title of a book in the other book he had, and I don't know. It was fun. As a side note, I quite enjoyed how it's never pointed out, but I think it's set up for the reader to infer and kind of get a chuckle out of, but the Ministry of Occultism neatly abbreviates to MOO. I quite like that.